Welcome to Everyday Economics, a weekly podcast about the economics in daily life. I'm your host, Pooja Mehra. The pace of India's recovery from the pandemic will be determined by how quickly economic activity normalizes. The stringent lockdown measures that were imposed at the end of March caused economic activity to suddenly stop, after which, out of fear and due to uncertainty about the future, people started saving more and cutting back on consumption. Efforts to relax the lockdown measures that were in place after May are resulting now in the normalization of economic activity and improved mobility. The pace at which this normalization takes place will in turn determine how quickly and robustly the economy will recover. My guest this week is Chief Economist, India and Asia, ex-Japan, Nomura, Sonal Verma. I asked her what the early evidence emerging from the official data and the variety of indicators and indices that she tracks are showing, if economic activity is anywhere close to returning to the pre-lockdown levels, how these early trends could affect the overall growth picture. The episode was recorded before the release of the official GDP estimates on August 31st, but Sonal's insights and analysis turned out to be consistent with the picture that emerged from the release. Welcome to Everyday Economics, Sonal. I'm so glad to have you on the show.
Thanks very much, Pooja. Glad to be here.
In the past few weeks, we've heard conflicting narratives emerging from Delhi. Senior finance ministry officials and the Prime Minister himself have said that they are seeing green shoots and they assure us of a V-shaped recovery after this COVID crisis. Whereas when talking to the states about revenue collections at the GST Council meeting, the finance minister seemed a little less optimistic in terms of the economy's health. You work with a number of trackers to assess the pace of economic activity as well as the normalization of economic activity as the lockdowns that were imposed in March begin to be calibrated. What are these indicators telling you about the first the normalization of economic activity, and then later I'll come to what that means for the economic recovery. But first, I want to find out, what is the pace of normalization you're seeing?
Yeah, Pooja, I think you've used exactly the right term. It's normalization, and I would not call it a recovery because across indicators, activity levels are still below the pre-pandemic levels. So everything was shut down in April, and from the lows, as lockdowns are getting relaxed, things are normalizing. We are not even back to the pre-pandemic levels. So it isn't really a recovery, it's more of a normalization. What is interesting is that, while there is a normalization across most sectors and subsectors, it's actually quite uneven. So if you split the economy into demand versus supply side indicators, what you'll find is that the supply side indicators, so, when we are talking about things like power generation or coal production, cement production, etc., the supply side indicators have normalized at a faster pace. Just to, let's say, give a number to this, relative to the pre-pandemic levels, the supply side indicators are back at 80-85% of the pre-pandemic levels. Mind you, not at 100% yet. The demand side indicators, though, so when you look at, across consumption, investment, external sector demand indicators, the pace of recovery across the demand side indicators is actually much slower. So relative to the 80-85% on the supply side, the demand side indicators are actually still about slightly above 65%. There's also, a gap between industry versus services sector indicators. So a lot of the services sector indicators are still lagging in the recovery process, which should not really be a surprise because, for a COVID-19 kind of, pandemic, any service which is contact intensive, and, while the virus cases are still rising, there is this public fear factor and apprehension of people in terms of going out. So the services sector of the economy is actually normalizing at a much slower pace. And some of the transportation sector services, we of course don't have good data on restaurants, etc. But most of these are actually at like 20 30% of pre-pandemic levels still. So, and of course, even within the consumption side, there's a bifurcation between rural related indicators, whether it's tractor two-wheeler sales, which are doing much better than some of the urban side indicators. So essentially, it's normalization. I would not term it a recovery yet. And two, even this normalization is quite uneven, with the demand side indicators actually still lagging on the supply side. So that is one, Pooja. I think the other aspect, I think it's important to, highlight to your listeners is different countries are at different stages when it comes to the level at which they are normalizing. So what I mean by that is in April, across the world, most countries had stringent lockdowns and activity had collapsed, what we call sudden stop in demand. That happened across the world. Since then, activity has picked up everywhere. But the level at which activity is currently at actually differs across countries. So countries which have managed to contain the virus have seen their activity more or less go back to pre-pandemic levels, whereas countries which have not controlled the virus are seeing activity plateau out at levels which are still, in India's case, for instance, 20-30% below pre-pandemic levels. So there's also a big divergence in the pace of recovery. So how things go forward is actually going to depend to a large extent on the path of the virus as well.
Right. So you're making a number of points over here. First, you're saying that there is a difference in the recovery or the normalization of the demand side factors and the supply side factors. Secondly, you're saying that the most important factor right now is going to be how well a country deals with the public health crisis, that is the pace of spread of the virus. You also talked about fear among people as a factor that could be holding down the level of economic activity. So let's talk about these separately. When you talk of the factors influencing normalization of activity between demand and supply, what explains the difference in the pace and manner in which they are normalizing?
So the supply side indicators are actually largely a function of more administrative lockdown kind of measures. So if you do have, high level of cases in a particular state, you have, restrictions on what kind of activities, whether you can produce something or not. If you cannot produce, you cannot produce. So the supply side, for a company to decide whether I can produce this much or not is a function of whether the entire, the administratively, does the manufacturer have a green signal from the local authorities to produce or not. So as the lockdowns are being relaxed, it's easy for me as a manufacturer to start ramping up my output. As long as I have, the labor that is back and I have all my supply side ingredients, I can produce. It's not an issue. The demand side, of course,
it depends on government and administrative factors.
Absolutely. Whereas when you're talking about demand side, it's actually more of a behavioral angle that comes to it. And for instance, let's say the same local authority which has given a green signal to the manufacturer to, produce product X, if that green signal has been given during a period where virus cases are still rising, as a consumer, the consumer might still be quite fearful of venturing out because of virus cases still picking up. Or the demand side could also be weak for other reasons. I mean, the COVID-19 shock, of course, is a massive cash flow shock for consumers. And typically, what we've seen historically, there have been a lot of studies on how the consumer behavior responds post pandemics, and there's a clear trend of a pickup in precautionary savings post pandemic. So, because of the uncertainty on future incomes, consumers prefer to save more rather than consume. So, it could be because of the fear factor, I just don't want to venture out. It could be because I want to save more because there's uncertainty on future income. The job market situation, of course, is on the weaker side. Similarly, even from the firm's perspective, I mean, businesses also demand stuff for investment, etc. And if profitability has been impacted, then their need for future discretionary spending is also going to be weak. So the supply side is actually easy to fix, whereas the demand side, which brings into the more behavioral aspects, is harder, obviously, to control. And given the size of the shock and the uncertainty it has created and the actual impact it has had on cash flows of consumers and businesses, it's not surprising that beyond the car industry, for instance, is seeing some increase in demand, and there's a pent-up demand that is visible there. But beyond that, consumers are a lot more cautious, and in general, final demand is a lot more cautious. I'll also add here that this is not specific to India at all. I mean, if you look at the example of China, and China has done a pretty good job in controlling COVID-19. Yet, if you look at the indicators in China, since they have sort of gone back to normal, the same story. Your industrial activity, everything is sort of getting back to normal at a faster pace, whereas retail sales, particularly sales outside cars, are taking a much longer period to come back. And that is primarily because of the impact that the COVID-19 shock has had on the job market prospects.
And before I ask you the next question, what is the data you track, to sort of for these indicators that you have collated for these findings?
So there are a number of high frequency indicators that are available. So I mean, these days, actually, both Apple and Google have started to publicly release the mobility data, which gives you a sense of where, let's say, retail, recreation activity, or whether people, the driving activity today versus some baseline, is it back at normal or not? So these are very high frequency sort of daily indicators. We also get power demand data on a high frequency basis. There's, the agency CMI releases weekly data on labor market in terms of participation rate. But on a monthly basis, of course, there are a number of high frequency indicators across the industrial activity. So as I was mentioning, coal, cement, power generation. You also have railway traffic data. On the demand side, there's car sales, two-wheeler sales, tractor sales. So in fact, there are quite a bunch of high frequency indicators, both on some on daily, some weekly, and some on a monthly basis, which if you combine together, it'll give you a broad sense of how the growth side is evolving.
Right. And on cars, of course, because there were very stringent lockdowns earlier, and just like for other goods and services, mainly goods, there's going to be pent-up demand, which may eventually peter out or plateau out. But for cars specifically, since public transport is likely to be seen as risky and is also not back, I think, at full service levels, pre-COVID full service levels, is that what is driving affecting car and two-wheeler sales?
So two-wheeler, of course, is sort of different a bit to cars to the extent that a larger demand comes from non-urban markets, because at least in the initial parts of the COVID-19 impact, it's been more urban-centric than the rural semi-urban centric. So in fact, if you look at things like tractor, which is sort of on the extreme side of and is typically seen as a proxy of a rural indicator, the pace of normalization there has been very fast. Two-wheelers is somewhere in between cars and tractors. So, you've seen relatively lesser, sort of economic impact, lesser lockdowns in some of the semi-urban areas, and therefore normalization has been faster. But for cars specifically, I think the primary reason, I mean, to our mind, is the pent-up demand channel, which is playing out. Whether lack of public transportation is leading to people buying more cars is possible, but ultimately, anybody's decision to buy something like a car is not a small decision. So, I think uh, I would put lesser weightage on, lack of public transportation as a rationale for why car sales are picking up. It could be at the margin, but I think it's largely to do with sort of pent-up demand that we are seeing on the car side. And the reality of where every economic indicator will stabilize at, one would think will reflect only post the festive season. So, let's say post October, November, we'll get a better sense of how much of this is purely pent up demand versus where the steady state demand is. So our sense is in the very near months, because the pent-up channel is playing a much bigger role, it might actually be exaggerating the underlying demand, which may not actually be as high as what the current levels are suggesting. So let me actually take a step back. While we are dealing with the COVID-19, while we are still fighting the COVID-19 shock, our sense is this is going to basically be a three-phased recovery, or let me say three-phase normalization. Phase one was essentially March and April, when you saw a sudden collapse in activity. Phase two has been post-April, as lockdowns are being relaxed. There is a pent-up demand, and the sequential pace of activity normalization is quite fast. And India is right now in this phase two of pent-up sequential normalization because of lockdowns, relaxation, pent-up demand, etc. As we go forward, and this is under the assumption that a vaccine is still not here. Once you've normalized to a certain level and pent-up demand is over, you enter phase three, where sequentially the pace of activity is going to be slower. And we could reach that level, in a month. Maybe it'll take 2-3 months for different sectors because, like I said, the pace is actually differs across sectors. But sequentially, the pace of normalization is also going to peter out as we go forward until we get a vaccine.
And I was reading in one of your reports that different states are showing a different pace of normalization. And in fact, states which account for larger proportion of India's GDP are actually seeing slower pace of normalization because they're also seeing a larger or faster growth in the number of COVID cases. But that could, of course, also be because they have better testing and reporting facilities. So they're capturing larger number of the cases. The other states may not be capturing that many number of cases. But what I want to ask you is that, which are these states and how are the different states, sort of faring?
So the big economic centers, of course, Maharashtra is quite important. The states of Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Delhi was initially seeing a big increase in cases. So some of these states are, the ones that are big economic centers, of course, also contribute, also tend to be more susceptible to higher COVID because you do see more, migration and more trade-related activities. They also, therefore, are more important in terms of contributing to national output. So these were essentially the key states that saw the biggest increase in cases, and because of that, a greater decline in activity levels. So that is what has been the case. I think, more recently, um, there is clearly a shift in terms of states that are also driving higher cases, and this is of course something that will continue to evolve, so we need to still monitor. But clearly Delhi, incrementally, the number of cases are now coming down, and even in some of the southern states, the kind of increase we had seen back in July, and the well, not exactly stringent lockdowns, but at least the restrictions that were put in place a month back looks like has stabilized the number of cases. But at an aggregate, of course, cases still do continue to increase in states like Maharashtra, Odisha, Uttar Pradesh is still seeing rising number of cases still. West Bengal as well. The other thing that's evolving is, this entire rural versus urban phenomena, because to the extent that we are now seeing more COVID cases outside urban areas, the question is to what extent the rural recovery we have seen so far might get might at least slow down to an extent because of cases picking up there. So, the entire COVID-19 and how it will evolve, at an aggregate level, how will it evolve at a state level? I think this is something it's very hard for us to predict. But as this evolves, I think it's important to monitor because the activity levels and a lot of the nuances of the growth outlook will be a function of how this evolves. So it's clearly quite important to monitor this.
What you're saying is very important because in the narrative that we hear here in India, we mainly hear of the balance sheet problems of companies, the loans, the outstanding debt, and the various things around that. Also the need for fiscal support from the government for households. We hear as all of these being the main factors determining the recovery, the economic recovery. But you're saying that before that, the pandemic curve itself before is a more important factor for the recovery.
Yeah, I think we need to basically, split this into the cyclical view and the longer term, medium term trend growth view. So, as far as the near term cyclical growth path is concerned, that is going to be more a function of how the pandemic curve plays out to a large extent. Now, the COVID-19 shock, in turn, as we were discussing, is a big cash flow and balance sheet shocks. And because India entered this shock with very weak balance sheet, this sort of amplifies the balance sheet shocks, whether it's for the corporates or the banking sector and for the fiscal authorities also. So this shock in turn can have, and our view is it's going to have an adverse impact on the medium-term trend growth also. But I think we need to differentiate between the short-term cyclical growth versus the medium-term trend growth. The balance sheet issues are extremely important, but they're important in terms of the trend growth rather than the near-term pace of recovery.
For lay listeners, if you could explain what do you mean when you say short-term cyclical and medium-term trend?
Sure. So essentially, I mean, from a long-term perspective, the question is, what is the pace at which a country can grow on a sustainable, at a sustainable rate? I mean, there are technical ways to define it, but in very simplistic term, what is a sustainable rate at which a country can grow over a longer period of time? Let's say over the next 5 years on average, what is going to be India's growth? So, that is what I mean by, let's say, the trend growth over time. Whereas, when I'm referring to the cyclical growth, I'm essentially looking at more the very short term, let's say the next 6 to 12 months, what the growth numbers will be. So typically, the economy, let's say, has a trend growth of 6 to 7%, hypothetically speaking. Countries never grow at the trend always. The cycle, you're either growing below trend or above trend, and these are in simplistic terms called the business cycle. So I'm saying the business cycles will be determined by the pandemic curve. Um, Along with a few other factors like global growth, whereas the medium term trend growth will be a function of balance sheets, whether policy support has been enough to prevent the permanent damage to balance sheets, some of these factors.
We are recording this episode ahead of the release of the GDP estimates on the 31st of August, which would be out by the time the episode is aired. Still, I wanted to know, what is your view? Is the April-June quarter likely to be the worst of the COVID contraction, or the coming quarters could be even worse? You're saying that normalization of economic activities, I think you said up to about 80%. Did I get that right? So
on the supply side, yes.
On the supply side. So, from there, are we going to only see an improvement, or we are still in for some more pain?
So the April to June quarter, of course, is going to be the worst quarter because you were in the most stringent part of the lockdown. Most countries that have already released the June quarter number have seen a growth contraction, and with the ones that had stringent lockdowns have seen a growth contraction of anywhere between -8% year over year to -16, -17% year over year. So that's been sort of the range in which growth has contracted in most countries. So for India, our sense is the pace of contraction should be somewhere in the middle of that range as well. And given the lockdown relaxations have started since May and activity normalization has happened, even though it's stabilizing at a low level, the forthcoming quarters, the pace of contraction will be slow. What is important though is how long does it take to get back to the pre-pandemic normal level? And our sense is that it might be until early calendar year 2022 for the level of India's GDP to be back at where we were prior to COVID-19 started. So
which in any case was which in any case was not a very good number.
Which in any case was slowing down. I mean, exactly, we were in a slowdown since end of 2018 anyway. And this shock, is going to take a long time. So even if the pace of contraction is going to be much lower going forward, I don't think that in itself is good enough, because the time it's taking to get back to pre-pandemic normals is going to be quite long. And I think more importantly is the impact the shock has on the medium-term trend growth. So because I think the one thing that is still not clear is the knock-on effects of COVID-19. So what is the extent of increase in unemployment, whether it's in the formal sector or the informal sector? in the organized sector, will there be a moderation in salary growth? What impact that is going to have? Companies, if you're a company, if you're a small business owner, if you're going to have to operate at 70-80% capacity for 12 months while you're paying a certain fixed cost every month, that's not good enough. You're burning cash to stay afloat. So that implies that companies' profitability, is getting dented in a big way. They will be facing pressure as far as debt servicing is concerned. And therefore, we are therefore seeing rating downgrades as well. Some firms, particularly the smaller firms, it's a question of survival because of lack of liquidity, which is why policymakers were focused on ensuring that liquidity does not lead to, insolvency of any firm. We don't know what the true impact on the banking sector will be because, as the loan restructuring happens over the course of the next, 1 year and 2 year, that will also have an impact on banking sector balance sheets that can lead to banks becoming more risk averse. So a lot of the knock-on effects, as of now, we are still talking about the pandemic curve. Is activity normalizing or not? How fast, etc. But as the dust settles, and as we look out over the next 1 to 2 years, we still don't know. There is a lot of uncertainty on the extent of damage that COVID-19 has inflicted. And I think those knock-on effects are going to play out over the course of the next 1 to maybe 3 years. So, let's see how it plays out. And this is where the policy responses do become important because the primary objective of policymakers during this shock is to ensure that the cash flow shock does not lead to any permanent growth damage. So whether you're giving cash support to households, which is important from a poverty alleviation perspective, or you're giving liquidity support to smaller companies to ensure there isn't bankruptcy. All of this is to ensure that you keep your supply capacity intact even after the COVID-19 shock is over. So policy support is actually extremely crucial right now.
Are you seeing policy support of the sort that is needed? Are you satisfied?
In terms of the monetary policy side, I think clearly we have seen quite a lot, both in terms of rate action, liquidity action. I would say even from the government side, the on-budget fiscal support, of course, is quite less. I mean, the actual budgetary allocations on our estimates is, perhaps around 1% of GDP, which is actually one of the lowest across a number of countries we cover. So for the kind of growth impact and the stringency of lockdowns that India has seen, the budgetary support has actually been quite less. Now, over and above the budgetary support, sort of the liquidity and credit facility support that has been given by the government, which is in the form of guarantees to enable the non-bank financial companies, the MSME sectors, etc. I think some of those credit guarantee kind of facilities, while they are not technically a part of the fiscal deficit, nevertheless are extremely important from a survival perspective. So more still needs to be done. I think since India is operating at a below normal capacity for a fairly long period of time, I would think that more support is required because this particular crisis, it's a real economy shock. And this particular crisis particularly hits the smaller guys more, whether it's the informal sector worker or it's the informal sector company, the MSMEs, etc. So the those informal sector requires a lot more policy support to our mind. And this I'm talking just about staying afloat kind of policy support. In fact, our whole construct of the policy support, let's say from a fiscal policy standpoint, the policy support that is necessary has to rather come through in two phases. You have the current phase where you're fighting COVID-19. Most of the policy support is basically a survival support. It's not a fiscal stimulus. Somebody has lost income. You're just giving the cash transfer to keep him or her afloat. You're giving support to MSMEs to keep them afloat. Once the COVID-19, it's a lifeline. It's not a stimulus. Now, the thing is, when we move out of COVID-19 and we get into an environment of when the knock-on effects of COVID-19 start playing out, balance sheets of the private sector will not be in a position to sustainably drive private demand. There will again be a need for authorities to step in. And that, of course, is a challenge, right, Pooja? I mean, the fiscal side for India, we entered the COVID shock with lesser fiscal space. And to an extent, the lesser than peer country support given from the budget is to an extent because of the starting position on the fiscal side. But going forward, actually, a lot more fiscal support will still be necessary in our view.
Right. So from what you're saying, given you're saying that we are just going to be looking at 2 to 3 years for first normalization, then knock-on effects. How correct is it for the voices in Delhi to be talking about a V-shaped recovery?
So, I mean, I think it's depending on what sector you're talking about. It's more of a somewhere between I guess a U-shaped or maybe a swoosh-shaped kind of a normalization right now. Now, until we have a vaccine, there is this issue of the normalization process, which might take another year and a half or so. Post which you have the knock-on effects which will play out, which I was mentioning earlier. We will need a second stage of fiscal stimulus in the form of demand stimulus to actually come in from the government. So at this stage, I mean, we would not characterize it as a V-shaped recovery. As I said, I think it's more a normalization, and the pace of normalization differs across sectors. And I think going forward, we need to ensure that the supply side of the economy, which is our firms and our households, the informal sector, we preserve the supply side. So it's quite premature actually to say that it's over. I think the fight still continues.
And also, the talk, the narrative around green shoots. What is being called green shoots, and would you also call whatever indicators are being called green shoots as green shoots?
So it's a matter of perspective, I guess. Glass half full or half empty. So to the extent that let's say, industrial production was -50, -60% in April, and it's, -15, -20% today, it's better. Now, clearly, there is a normalization that is going on. But like I said, I would, the drops in activity we saw back in March and April, the sudden stop, the phase one of the cycle, it's basically a man-made recession. It was the lockdowns that were imposed. Activity had to come to a halt. You remove the lockdowns, things are normalizing back. Um, Things are normalizing, though, at a level that are still below the pre-pandemic level, and the medium-term impact on consumer demand, capex demand, etc., is still unknown. So, at this stage, I would characterize it as India is seeing normalization. We are not yet back to pre-pandemic normals. There's substantial unevenness between the pace at which different sectors of the economy are normalizing. There are some sectors which, for instance, whether it's particularly the tourism, hospitality sectors, which are not normalizing at all. And they will still need a lot of policy support. So we are still in the normalization process, and I think that's how I would characterize it right now.
And my last question for the day: how is China doing, and what is China's April-June growth data looking like?
So China has actually already released its April-June quarter GDP number, and Q1 was essentially the peak quarter of lockdown for China, where its GDP contracted by slightly under 7% year over year. And in the April to June quarter, they've already seen a rebound in GDP numbers back into the positive territory. But the difference, of course, with China is that the pandemic curve was controlled fairly well, which basically enabled China to restart its supply chain, etc. So things have normalized at a slightly faster pace in China. What we've also seen is a lot of policy support coming through. So authorities are particularly focused on kickstarting a lot of infrastructure projects. So credit easing in China has been stepped up, and that is supporting recovery as well. So those are the factors that are supporting recovery in China. But even in China, its authorities are finding that there are pockets of weaknesses. So some of the small and mid-sized banks are facing pressures as far as their asset quality issues are concerned. As I was mentioning earlier, outside of car sales, the retail sales side of consumption is actually normalizing at a much slower pace. Migrant workers who are also facing issues as far as jobs and incomes are concerned, which is the reason why consumption is taking a lot longer. In fact, in China, despite having controlled COVID, some of the services sectors are still not normalizing as fast. So the fear factor is actually still playing out in specific services sectors in China. So China is actually doing, I think, on a relative basis, China has done very well. In fact, China, Taiwan, Korea, until the recent resurgence, some of these Northeast Asian countries have done fairly well. But in general, most other countries, particularly the emerging Asian countries like India, Indonesia, Philippines, are actually still struggling with COVID-19.
I think China was able to bring the pandemic under control also because it used some very authoritarian measures. But the IMF has projected that China is likely to be the only economy to show positive growth this year. Does that projection remain the same, or China could also slip into a contraction?
No, it doesn't look like China will slip into a contraction. Most indicators are suggesting that on the investment side, particularly the infrastructure investment side, things have picked up. And also the reopening that we have seen globally is also helping China at the margin in terms of the export cycle. Also, there's been a huge demand, particularly for the protective equipment. So, pharmaceuticals side is doing well. Tech exports in general have done very well this year because of this entire move towards digitization. So, some of these factors are actually still supporting the recovery in China. So, second quarter GDP, April to June quarter GDP in China was slightly over 3%. And second half of this year, their growth rate should be in the 4 to 5% range. So I think for the full year, China should manage a positive growth.
And just finally, last question, why could India not take advantage of the normalization globally in terms of Indian exports taking advantage of the normalization of demand globally?
So India will also see the impact. So relative to the significant, I think 40-50% export contraction we had seen back in early parts of the April-June quarter, you are seeing sequentially exports also pick up in India. Of course, they are not picking up as fast as in China and some other countries because a lot of the normalization, so the pockets of strength globally are also quite narrow. It's not a broad-based pickup. It's either linked to more of these pharmaceutical categories. It's very technology-oriented exports. You are seeing a pickup in, auto-related exports also. So I think India is, of course, on the tech side, not there. For the auto, etc. And I think in general, as globally things are normalizing, India will see a benefit. So, I would expect India's exports to also see some recovery. But again, I mean, the composition of exports is also quite important. So it's, like I said, it's not a broad base. Exactly what is playing out in India is also playing out in a number of other countries. I don't know if I mentioned this, but there have been studies on past pandemics globally and the consumer behavior post pandemics. And typically, there does tend to be an increase in precautionary savings. So globally, the pent-up demand is largely visible in the auto category. In some countries, we've also seen housing transactions pick up because of low interest rates, for instance. But outside that, the pace of recovery is a bit slow. And if globally consumers will be a bit more cautious, the export cycle will also see maybe like a two-phased uneven of recovery. And from a more medium-term perspective, it's quite interesting, but also concerning that COVID-19 seems to have accelerated the deglobalization trend that was underway prior to the pandemic. So a number of countries are actually turning inward given growth constraints. China is in fact talking about something called an inner loop, where they're also looking to produce more domestically rather than import. US, for instance, Biden administration's the campaign of Biden administration is talking about Make in America. So it's not just India which is looking more inward to maximize growth. Everybody is. So the global trade pool itself is shrinking. So I think a lot of this will have an impact on the medium-term, market share. So it's going to become a lot competitive going forward, and the supply chain disruptions which are going on, and the supply chain, the global value chain relocations that are ongoing out of China. There is immense competition among countries, particularly in Asia, to capture some of the market share. So India has to compete very aggressively to take advantage of these shifting global value chains.
Yes, in fact, ICRIER's chief was on the show, Dr. Rajat Kathuria, and he was saying exactly the same thing as you're saying on going forward, how India is going to have to work very hard if India has the ambition of capturing some of these shifting supply chains. Thank you so much, Sonal, for speaking to me for the Everyday Economics podcast on the process of normalization of economic activity post the COVID outbreak. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.